Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another video. I'm very excited to be sharing my next guest with you, Wade Caves. If you've not come across Wade, before we introduce you, Wade, just want to give a quick shout out to the magazine, WellBeing Astrology 2023, which of course Wade has penned a stunning article on Pluto in Aquarius. I'll go to pop all the information about how to get your hands on a copy. There's comprehensive horoscopes, also other published work by fantastic
And I just want to
astrologers.
also say international shipping on that. My mom, the first time I wrote for WellBeing, was so excited about it. She went online and she got a couple of copies, and it was very easy for her.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
all over the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's changed, but I thought that the publisher did not send internationally. I mean, I can, I order copies and I send it to people who request it from me, or you can just get a digital, which is,
Okay. Well, I'm glad you said something. Sorry for.
I don't know, maybe things have changed or your mum somehow got it another way. But if you
Yeah.
have an Earth Venus like I do, you need the real thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's articles obviously from myself. I write the horoscopes. There's Kelly Surtees, Alicia Yusuf, Alex Trenoweth, Gary Caton. Like, there's a fantastic array of work in this publication, but I'm not going to talk about that any longer because I really want to welcome Wade and speak to the article of which he wrote, all things which everyone wants to know about, Pluto in Aquarius. So Wade, take it away. Tell us all that you would love to share. Introduce yourself, your astrological career, all the things. Tell us
Oh
everything.
gosh, all of that. Let's
Well,
see.
yeah, just what you want
First,
to share.
the first thing I'd like to share is you look fantastic. I have,
Oh,
you got quite a striking image there. Um, let's see. So my name is Wade. I've been an astrologer, professional astrologer for, I guess, a few years now. I started in 2013, um, studying horary. And then I think my practice went public around 2014 and 2015. I started teaching, which might have been a little too early in hindsight, but it's what happened. And went full time in 2020 thanks to COVID.
yeah.
Everything kind of it shook the jar up a little bit. Yeah, I'm excited to have been able to contribute to WellBeing Astrology magazine. The astrology edition this time around is great. I was thinking about when I got the invitation to submit something, I was thinking a lot at the time about just how much air we were coming into. We've had the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in the beginning of Aquarius, zero Aquarius, that happened in right around the winter solstice in 2020. The sun was still at 0 degrees of Capricorn. I mean, it was on the day of the solstice, really. And that happened in Aquarius. Now, this isn't just any conjunction, because the conjunctions between Saturn and Jupiter are 20 years apart, and they also tend to stay in the same triplicity, or the same element, for 200 plus years. We happen to be just closing that period where we were straddling between the earth conjunctions and the air conjunctions. Obviously, we had the forerunner of this, almost like that itch you get in the forehead when you starting to think that you might be sick. You get a little smattering or
Scratch
something,
in
but
the
it's not.
throat.
Yeah, but it's not the thing itself yet. It's just the
Yeah,
messenger of it. And we had that in 80, 81, 82, somewhere in that ballpark, with the Saturn Jupiter
the
conjunction in
Libra.
Libra. But we just now moved into that conjunction in Aquarius, starting off a cycle that will last for 200 plus years, almost 200 years. Then there's Uranus coming into Gemini really soon, and that is going to be a really spicy thing to watch. A lot has happened in terms of world axes of power when Uranus goes into Gemini.
Yeah.
That may not be like a permanent signature, but there are a lot of nations who are quite wealthy, running things around the world, that have very sensitive points in Gemini,
Not to mention any
Sagittarius.
countries.
It's like, just a handful. But there, and that is going to be an explosive kind of combo. And again, it's in an air sign. And then Pluto is about to be moving into an air sign for the first time in quite a while. So, you know, we're looking at the shift of so much movement into air, air. And, you know, as I work so much with traditional techniques that I don't often get to spend time with Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. I find myself a little bit busy with these other things, but I was really captured with trying to figure out each of these individual elements with these air ingresses. And so I have spent time with this Uranus and Gemini and the Pluto and Aquarius in a way that has felt really creative and a lot of fun. And I wanted to share some ideas with the readers of WellBeing magazine. So that's what I threw in. So, you know, some of the things and themes that I talk about are, you know, what happened the last time Pluto went into Aquarius. And the reality is fairly simple to explain. I mean, Leo is ruled by the sun. It's a sign of monarchy and centralization and everything coming together. It is the sign to associate with hierarchy and pyramid scheme, pyramid plan, all of that. Because it's the seat of the king, you know, it's just what it is. Saturn rules the opposite side, which is the seat of the people, or the subjected. It really shouldn't be worded as the seat of the people. It should be the seat of the subjected, because when the, you know, the people don't see themselves as subjective, that imagery changes with how they connect with it.
Yeah.
So at any rate, that's, you know, part of what's shown through this Aquarius imagery is this drive to flatten structures, decentralize. You know, when you take a look at Aquarius, I've been talking a lot about this lately in like every webinar that I've been in about Aquarius. I just read this in Manilius, and it was like, it just struck me as such a beautiful image that Aquarius does not, in its urn, you know, there's a maximum capacity that it can carry. The waterman can't get more than a certain amount. It can certainly get less, but there is an overflowing point, and it's meant to be redistributed. So there's an association with this sign on the breaking down of extremes, and typically the extremes in resources. So, and the reason for that is because, again, this water imagery, you know, if you picture water in an urn, we're talking about, you know, a material resource that's needed for life. And this is it's meant to be redistributed back. You know, the waterman is pouring his jug. He's not hoarding. It's supposed to be that image. So Aquarius flips this whole Leo dynamic a little bit up on its head. And it starts to push for certain messaging, like labor organizing, which we're seeing happening at quite astounding rates all over the world. We start to see decentralization of structures. We start to see people organize themselves on more local levels, and we also see frequently the lifting of the wall in terms of the access to the best of human potential. So back in like because remember, Aquarius is a human sign, so all of this movement is about reestablishing. If I could put it into one thing, the Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini, the effects of these will be about reestablishing a new social contract amongst people. It's impossible that these movements don't lead towards that, and it may not be a situation where we see significant progress in what that looks like. But when we, in the future, cast our minds back to what constructed the new social contract, you will see those signatures. So, you know, the last time we had Pluto in Aquarius, because I'm being recorded, I'll get the date wrong. It was
I don't know, 17 something. I know it is a bit like that, isn't it? Hang on, let me just have a look because I've got it right in front of me. So I know it was sort of like around, I know
I can open my article I wrote.
That's what I've done right now. But I remember well, not that I was around, but I remember my own research. It was when sort of Latin America separated itself from Spain. I think some of maybe the dates are loose, like the clans of Scotland was sort of a bit dismantled.
I mean, monarchy in all of its, the Commonwealth was looking extremely fractured at that
exactly
stage. And you know, that end of Pluto and Capricorn was like preparing
April
the way
1777 to December 1798.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is right around the time where everything was really kicking off between the UK and the US at the very least, but then the back half of the 18th century, there were a lot of events that were leading up to the French Revolution and, all that kind of
Mm,
exciting stuff. So, there are lessons in history about, what kind of happened as Pluto moved through. And that's what I wrote about in WellBeing magazine. And I wrote specifically from the perspective of breaking down these chunks of Jupiter's movement into manageable segments. Jupiter will be in Aquarius for a long time, so there's we got to kind of break down where these pieces fall. So I decided to use the terms of
you mean
Aquarius.
Pluto in Aquarius, not Jupiter?
Yes, what did I say? I meant
I think you
yeah,
said Jupiter.
okay, I meant
That's
Pluto.
okay.
Yeah, I meant Pluto.
Just in case people
So
were listening and thinking, what's he talking
yeah, sorry.
about?
So the movement of Pluto through the terms of Aquarius and segmented those off as like little mini periods within
Yeah.
this larger transit to kind of
Mm,
explore. So I just outlined some of those ideas, and then, encouraged a little bit of thought about, where we see our world presently and where similar fracturing points are likely to occur,
yeah.
where new things will be seeded. I mean, the image of Pluto, it's funny that I said Jupiter. I probably said it because I've been talking about Saturn, Jupiter. But the thing with Pluto is I do think there's a very strong Jupiterian theme within that planet. Um, there's such a extreme well of wealth that resides within Hades. It's like no matter how much of the cave you excavate, there is only a richer and more
Hmm.
valuable gem behind it. And the
Yeah.
further you go, you know, um,
Which is
and we can
really
get
kind of
all the
what's
way.
happening now, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that sort of the last couple of years, like where has the wealth gone? Deeper
Well,
into people's caves, you know what I
and
mean?
then when you get to the very end, should there ever be one, the only thing that looks back at you is void.
Mm,
And so there is this kind of, I think that's the Pluto element connecting with wealth, and just to say Pluto, comes from the Greek word meaning wealth. So this is where that connection with wealth comes through. But the thing is, once you have all this, you can't come back to the overworld. It has to stay in hate. You can't bring it with you.
mm,
So there's something in this imagery that is also talking about um, seeing a better world and realizing we may not be ready for all of it yet, and figuring out how we start. It's like
mm.
we can continue to excavate in this mind space for a really long time. We can do that forever, but we can't bring that with us. At some point, there's no execution. It's the same problem that we have with theorists versus practical applicants everywhere. And I think people would be shocked to find out how much more meaningful it would be, instead of reading an article, to just show up to a city council meeting once in a while, you know?
Yeah, that's it. It's sort of
So,
like there's this overwhelm of information, but it's like, well, what are you doing with it? Like,
what do you do with it and where do you put it? And I think Pluto invites that kind of question. I don't really know that it ever points us to an answer, but it points to all the places we don't have them. Um,
mm.
you know, so
Yeah, Pluto is just one of those kind of, I guess, motifs when I'm speaking with clients is, once you're sort of touched by Pluto, things are
yeah.
forever different. You can't kind of go back to it. So when you think about, Wade, the sort of collective stuff that's going on, and obviously we're sort of in the last throes of the Pluto in an earth sign, and that really
Yeah.
reminds me of the idea of the tower card in tarot, right? So
Oh yeah,
when the
absolutely.
towers fall, it's like, the control and the wanting to keep those Plutonian resources for oneself to avoid the spread of information, which is kind of
Mhm.
where things are headed. So I think, for anyone who has a relative amount of awakeness to world events, is one thing, to speculate on those things. But how would you perhaps translate some of those ideas and concepts for
Mhm.
people to apply it to their birth chart? So maybe like the Aquarius house, if they have significant planets or points in
Yeah.
Aquarius, like what would this cycle for, the next 20 years? I mean, that's a long bow to draw, but would you might suggest? Because all my clients like, what the hell? Like, what am I going to do? Because I think 14 years of Capricorn, for a lot of people, and even people who are now practicing astrologers, have never experienced a Pluto sign change in their career. So what would you recommend?
That is so true. I was just talking with Wendy Stacy about that. It was, I think it was about Neptune. And I think I said, you know what? Neptune's about to change signs, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I've never practiced with Neptune not in Pisces. I think it's always been there. Yeah, I was just talking about that same theme.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I think there's two things to remember with Pluto. The okay, maybe like 10 things.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot to say, and some of them are like, don't exaggerate it, it will come along on its own. And um for some people it gets experienced as simply a background environmental kind of palette rather than, a direct event or moment of any kind.
Yeah.
Um and it can produce a feeling of emergency. That is something that can be very, very reliably said about Pluto, whether that's a sense of, something breaking through the crust of the earth, like volcanic activity, metaphorical or literally, in some way, or if we're talking about making everything feel hyper urgent, right in, like the destruction is right before your eyes. It's a very, very dark image, in many respects. But the thing about Pluto is it stops getting scary if you just, it's like any other monster in like a horror film. If you like pause the tape and just look at the monster and see what it is, just, it's half of the fear is seeing something for the first time or not knowing what you're seeing and having no idea what the impact could be and trying to make sense of all of this. So Pluto is that place where you are asked not to look, and you must anyway. um and it never feels right. It's not something anybody can do with you. It is not something anyone can do with you. It is highly personal. um and it's, a wrestling with the void in one way or another. um it's a really beautiful experience if you let it be,
Yeah.
but you do have to submit to the fact that you have been passed this cup for all this time, and it's now your turn. It's your turn to get a
Mm.
glimpse beyond the veil, to feel, the magnitude of what reality can put in front of you. And sometimes it is as unfortunate as lives collapsing, deaths, things like this. But just as often as these things, are they expressions of inner experience or something positive as well? Because Pluto does have a connection with wealth. So it can also point to the recognition of an abiding abundance that you have always had. It can be a really beautiful message, and sometimes not have to really kick up the net, in
No,
a term. Right?
exactly.
It's, yeah.
Sometimes it's a reminder of the reservoir of strength within that you don't know you've got until it's, you flex that muscle once or twice and go, yeah, I can do this. I'm stronger than I
Yeah.
thought. And as someone with cardinal lights, I'm happy to
Right.
see the end of Pluto in
It's time for,
Capricorn.
yeah, the hard aspects of Pluto, I
Mm,
think, would be more challenging than
yeah.
the conjunction personally. I think that's going to be dependent though on the extent to which you're willing to engage with the idea of, you know, um coming into yourself a little bit. So
Yeah.
like if you asked earlier about like what about, Pluto through the houses, or how does it, I think what's going to be happening there is that there is going to be an expectation that you don't examine or don't look too closely in a certain area, but you end up as a result of that feeling going deeper into that place. um it could be, if it's in the 11th house, this could be connected to having a better understanding of one's friends, patterns that you may identify within one's friends, what that might say about you,
Yeah.
the type of friends that are around you and the type of friends who aren't, how long you've been in relationships with these people. And I don't think that it's going to feel hot the whole time that Pluto's
No.
there. I mean, if you use a quadrant-based system, a conjunction to the house degree is where I would say you would probably feel it most precisely. but it's just going to depend on how it lights up other things in your chart as it does through, that passage. But if it's through the 11th, it's going to be asking you to explore, friendship, benefactors, your hopes and your aspirations and wishes for your life, your relationship to hope, and your relationship to good luck. If Pluto's moving through your 10th, this now becomes a question about perhaps your mother, but maybe it's going to be closer to a situation related to your work life or your vision for your life. Because the 10th is really not about career. Career is an output. The 10th is about the direction the arrow on that bow is pointed. And there's no greater propeller out there than career. So this is where, and the laurels that are placed around our neck by the public, and you have the key to this city, and you have to, to do this and do this. And so I am charged by the public, for instance, to be in the role of astrologer, and just by being here, but at any rate, so when Pluto moves through here, there can be, really deep exploration on what that is. Maybe you find at some point in your life that you are feeling very dissatisfied in the type of work you're doing. Maybe the Pluto transit, all it does is it gives you an appreciation for how ethereal certain parts of your jobs are. And maybe it encourages a little more curiosity about how in the weeds you can go. A computer programmer, for instance, getting that Pluto over, that they really dig themselves, especially in Aquarius. Oh my goodness. I mean, that would be a really good indicator of somebody who finds, a lot of money by digging deep in code like that. I mean, that would be a really good signature for that. So if you're a coder and you got Aquarius on the midheaven, and everything else in your chart points in that direction, I think you should try and take that coding experience a bit deeper. If it's coming over the ascendant, I mean, very often the eye needs to turn inward.
Yeah.
But it also, the ascendant is the opposition to the 7th house, and so that might suggest you're learning more about yourself while you're watching the life of somebody across from you unravel in a different way. It could be about, your self-learning could be cycled into a 7th house kind of theme as a result of that opposition. So we kind of just really have to see.
Yeah, there's so many things. And it is a long cycle, so it can take more than just one shape, of course. So I think as far as 2023 is concerned, it's probably important to keep into context that it's only in Aquarius from March to June. So we don't even get our big toenail into those Aquarian waters, but we probably will feel that energy shift. And for some of us, there will be like a bit of a moment where we're like, okay, this is potentially what I'm staring down the barrel of. And in addition to that, we've already had a lot of Aquarian action astrologically. So this is not new energy. It's not like Pluto in Aquarius, just, like a curveball transit. We've had Saturn, we've had Jupiter, that sort of area of our life has already really been, shaken, not stirred already. So it's kind of another iteration as opposed to something totally new and different. So I think that's also something, if you are, an Aquarius dominant person in some way, and you're having that, oh my God moment, that is like, well, it's just a little bit of a different flavor of stuff you've already been working through or processing. And Saturn and Pluto do sort of share a little bit of overlay in terms of being the most distant, whether you're looking at it from the traditional visual model or from what most astrologers use. So it does sort of speak to that endpoint or that limit in some way. And, Saturn is, Pluto is the new Saturn for many astrologers. So I think, for me and my hope and what I've been guiding people towards is that, you've already dealt with a lot of crap through Saturn. This might be the time to kind of grow those proverbial wings and maybe overcome or, transform in some way, grow those kind of that renewal or those butterfly wings that kind of can help empower or strengthen you.
Yeah, that's quite nice. I was also thinking that because of the Aquarian signature that's going to be a part of this. It's going to bring in themes related to people. It's going to be bringing in themes about relating to people, about well-being. It's going to be trying to move things away from a centralized and centrally managed way of working into something that's a little more local, a
Yes.
little bit more distributed
Mm.
amongst people in, closer engagement. It's probably going to be pushing, in a literal sense, pushing upward, and kind of thinking blue sky scenarios, and no matter what house it's in your birth chart and what house it's transiting. So my house got, it's the sunset, and in New York it just gets so cold right now, and so like
You're
I've
feeling
been
it.
shaking for like I sat down just before this interview, and I can feel my hands shaking. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh, well,
I know. This
I
is
will,
Pluto and Aquarius. No,
I
we've
will,
invoked.
yeah, yeah, you're feeling that cold air, whereas here in,
Oh my gosh! Now that, yeah, that's exactly what it. Wow. Well,
yes,
welcome.
the icy winds of Aquarius.
Well, and also this reminds me that Aquarius, it takes place largely in February. I mean, in February, the ancient Romans used to hold this festival, like a cleansing festival,
Oh, wow.
and they would use what's called a februm, and it's just this like it's like a cat o' nine tails. It's like a whip with a whole bunch of leather straps on
Mm,
the end, and sometimes I believe they would be, have things in them like sticks or something that might cause some injury. And you would walk through the streets. I mean, if you've seen Game of Thrones, that like shame thing,
shame.
that's what this
Yeah.
is. And you are whipped with this februm, and the februm is meant, this action is meant to release the demons that you've held on to. It's penance in a way.
Wow.
It's a purifying
Mm,
ritual. And so with Aquarius, there will also probably come with this Pluto, crossing in, more conversations that use the word cleanse, clean, purify.
mm,
Those are dangerous words, is particularly where Pluto and the air signs are involved.
mm.
My brain goes to things like ethnic cleansing. My brain goes to things like trying to, um, well, I'll just leave the, audience to their imagination on all the different places that
We're
could go.
seeing that collectively already in terms of what you're allowed to
Already
think, what you're
started.
allowed to say, what you're allowed to post on social media.
Well, and even the, degree of the brazen degree of uh just how quickly things have shifted. I mean, this is being recorded shortly after Kanye West tried to merge the Star of David with a swastika,
Okay.
and say Hitler's not that bad. It was, so there are just interesting kind of things that are happening, with these images in the human mind right now. But the good thing to remember is that Pluto and Aquarius, it cannot stand extremes. Now, it's quite happy Aquarius can't handle extremes. It will eliminate extremes, but it's not afraid of taking extreme measures to do so. So it is very much a ends justify the means kind of sign,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of thing to look for. The French Revolution, one of the bloodiest in history, all of that got really predicated around, it didn't fall completely within the Pluto and Aquarius cycle, but the major points of that did. So it's a very potent energy to watch, and
Yeah.
possibly quite inciting. Lynn Bell once said that she found Aquarius very dogmatic, and I know exactly what she means by that. I can, you can kind of see that all over the place. So and I hope with Aquarius, I hope one of the things that we get is that the movement of Pluto into Aquarius brings a greater focus on the well-being of humanity. I mean, we're so focused on space travel, like trying to get from 2 day shipping on Amazon to 1 day if we can do, there's like so many problems we're trying to solve, but we still have, rampant hunger. Not every human on the face of the earth has access to water. Water is going to be a big conversation. This is Aquarius, so river health, dam health, water systems, water conservation system health, all that's going to kind of be a
Mm.
strong point of focus. And maybe even symbolically in our own lives, water will come up as a theme, but perhaps it would really need to be very closely configured to something in a birth chart for it to evoke something that strong.
And I like the point about that you bring up with water, because it is a really lovely anecdote for all the air,
Yeah.
to get out of the mind, to get out of the constant, dogmatic ideas that you might be getting pinged on social media or what have you, and, go have a swim at the beach or have a bath or something like that. Air is just so kind of
Yeah.
volatile and movable, whereas
Yeah.
water goes down, it can only come down, right? So again, that idea of the water bearer pouring out the water. And so it, from an energy perspective, just to be in water is, the negative ions and all of those things, it can just really help to just reset you. So sometimes like looking at a different element can be the medicine to help you, kind of get out of one's head. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for many people moving forward, as we just continue to push through this
Yeah.
air, the speed of things moving, the
Yeah.
access to information. I don't think our brains are literally, they're not built for what we expose them to anymore. And yeah, it's just really
Yeah, they're still
going.
trying to resolve problems that we don't really have anymore. I'm hoping it will come to me. Oh yes, I was just listening to an interview the other day, that was reminding us that even as something as simple as, when you're a child and you're scared that something's under your bed, that's because of thousands of years of biological programming that, you know, animals did snatch kids in the middle of the night, the ones who woke up
The
because they
dingo
thought they
took my
heard something.
baby.
Yeah, right. So there are just so many impulses that we hold on to that
Yeah.
are a result of us being a part of the animal kingdom that also needs to be taken into consideration when we have these
Mm.
huge movements into earth signs, is the impact that humanity has on each other, of course, but also on the natural environment.
Yeah, yeah. Particularly as we become more and more disconnected from that too.
Yeah, I would
Mm.
think so. And I just want to say too, with Aquarius, there is a really strong focus on hot water, not just water in general, but heated water. So, if you have strong Aquarius placements or getting hit by this Pluto transit through Aquarius, go to a hot springs. I think I like the bath suggestion because that's hot water. That's a good
Mm.
soothing thing. So if you've got the strong Aquarius placements, there's a good relationship to heated water and what that could do for your body, according to you know temperamental theory anyway.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about the links with Jupiter. And I think that's going to
Mm,
be really important, because ultimately Jupiter seeks to have a level of temperance and cohesion, which is
mm,
something that Aquarius tends to lack a little bit. So,
mm.
when you find yourself erring to this is how things should be, it might be more about, well, maybe it could be like this, or, see it from a more broader perspective, as opposed to a dogmatic viewpoint, or
There's going to
um,
be a really strong flavor of that also, because we're, for the next 20 years, in a Jupiter Saturn in Aquarius cycle. Like, we're in it,
mhm.
so that conjunction will be presiding over everything over the next, it's 2020, what now, 2022, so next like 17-18 years. So you're absolutely right. There's going to be
Mm.
pieces of Jupiter in there, pieces of Saturn as well, which
Yeah.
can cause feeling like there's no hope in certain situations, a sense of
Mm.
desperation, a sense of coldness or frigidness. But there's also the strong sense of Saturn, especially in its own sign, where it remembers its strength, and its ability to build and to structure things. So I think it's possible that we're on the arc of something good, even if it looks really scary and confusing right now.
Mm.
I mean, I'm a history buff, so I've read about so many different places. I constantly feel like the world is about to fall apart. I mean, constantly, but I read about times where
Yes,
things were,
I feel you.
no, yeah, but like I read about times like every day where it like was incredibly worse,
Yeah,
for all humans all over for everybody. And so it just gives me hope to remember that there are these moments where we're experiencing um, you know, global things that are going on. Remember to also connect very deeply with your own experience and, pay attention, connect with yourself during these times. It's
totally, totally.
individually that these problems get solved. And Pluto's going to bring, a lot of that kind of focus for people who have strong Aquarius or fixed sign placement, particularly in the early degrees of the fixed signs. They will feel that ingress and, be
Mm.
harbingers in a way, of what's to come.
Yeah, totally. And I think with all this kind of groupthink that is taking place, it's okay every now and then to pull out of that and go, well, no, actually, what do I think? What's right
Yeah.
for me? And you bring back the individual a little bit when things get a little bit too on the crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And
Mm,
actually, Leo is a sign that would really be focused on what power says. Aquarius would be interested in what experts say. So what's really great about this, movement into Aquarius is, I mean, the last time we had the Saturn Jupiter conjunctions in air signs, it also started in Aquarius, started like 12th, 13th centuries. Universities expanded. There was like a whole translation effort to get all these texts from Greek into Latin and then into,
yeah,
like other languages, to get as much information out there as possible. Um, and so I think there's, some strength that's going to come through that as well.
mm. I think, what we're going through is a bit of a teething period. How long
Yeah.
that teething period actually lasts, a few growing pains along the way of change, and some people are resisting that, some people trying to push for that in, very dramatic ways.
Yeah.
And it is that sort of
And some
argy-bargy.
people don't even know where they are. They
Yeah,
think they might be on one side, but they don't realize it's a whirlpool. So you could have started out over here and sometime along the way flipped over here and don't even realize it. And,
yeah,
you might come back round, but it's, the world is crazy right now. But, Pluto and Aquarius will shake everything up. That
that's it.
passage through Capricorn, it put a lot of pressure on global systems. Um, so we'll see what happens when it moves into Aquarius.
And I mean, what a time to be alive and to live through this. Not everyone
Yeah.
gets to live through a triplicity change.
That's true.
You know what I
Actually,
mean?
that is very true. I've always felt really blessed about that. Actually, when I realized that was going to happen, I would never be able to speak about it otherwise.
Well, if you think, probably all your remembered, um, like if you just think of your own sort of lineage and, 250 years ago, do you even know who
Yeah,
your ancestors were, that
yeah,
length of time ago, like, and what they
yeah.
would have gone through, you know what I mean? And so sometimes I think, I'm certainly not the history buff that you would be, but I often do think about like, what would it have been a lot, what would it have been like to be alive during these really kind of pivotal moments in history, whatever your kind of racial lineage is, your people from various continents, and what did they go through, and we're having our own kind of version of that,
Mm.
that's relevant to our point in history. So we've had this sort of just a continuum for a fair while, and now there's that sort of blip in the radar, and it's brings a new meaning to say, may you live in interesting times.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I used to say people say you want to live in good times or interesting times, and I always thought interesting, and now sometimes I regret it. I almost wish, everything was just
Bit more
relaxing.
linear. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It just doesn't really work
Yeah,
that way, does it?
I
Oh well.
know. So, yes, it's like, I mean, obviously, we could talk about this for such a long time. It's such rich, juicy times at many, many levels. But Wade, I would like to, do you have anything that's going on, in the upcoming future that you might like to let people know about?
Well, I have I could happily just show something real quickly. I think, oh, I can't actually show my screen. I have a like a little news desk that I'm starting where
Oh
I'm going to
yes,
be
which I
writing
get
about
emails
whatever.
from you for.
Oh, do
Yeah,
you? Oh,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. And I'll be writing more and more for that. I've got a couple of projects that I need to get off my desk. But I think the one thing I would say is, if you're looking for education in horary or looking for education in astronomy, chart calculation, house division, any of those kind of things, come see us at the School of Traditional Astrology,
Yeah.
sta.co. We have tons of courses. There's a horary course that started us out 25 years ago. Lee Lehman teaches her medical course with us. We've got Nina Griffin, who's teaching magical elections. I lead a course on astronomy for astrologers. We've got a good team there, carrying out some quality astrological education. So we'd love to see you.
Yeah, no, I can't recommend your work highly enough. I love you. And also too, one other thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so not only has Wade written in the magazine that I edit, but Wade is also a published author. So this
Isn't it such a cute little book? They
I
did such a good job
know.
designing it.
And if you've never felt books from Rubedo Press, we would just say, these Earth Venus, it's so stunning book. So published by Rubedo, who also has done Dimitri's recent works. But this is the life of
Yes, right.
times of William Lilly.
Yeah.
So if you are a horary buff or would love to learn more about Lilly, this is the go-to. All the footnotes and anecdotes are hilarious. I love this book.
Oh,
So
great.
definitely a really helpful little pocket resource there. So yeah, so much work. I love it.
Great. Well, it was nice to have that out there. So
Well, thank you so much, Wade. So
yeah, thanks
all
for
things
having me.
Pluto and Aquarius, Wade has written for us, and I'm sure you'll probably hear more from Wade and myself too, as we move into this interesting time.
Yes, yes, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you, Wade. It was so great to connect with you.
yeah, all right, bye-bye.
Okay, see you later.